Lesson 4.6, Should we treat obesity with behavioral therapies? The goals of this lesson are to give students experience interpreting real scientific data and to have students read a primary scientific article. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to dissect and explain the main hypothesis and methods used in the primary paper, describe the results of a primary paper, and identify alternative explanations for the results found in the paper. We'll achieve these goals by having a brief discussion with the students and by reading a scientific article. To prepare for this lesson, you will need to review the key scientific concepts that are presented throughout the lesson. This includes the reward pathway and its role in food cravings and food addiction. You can review this scientific content in the background reading provided for you in the teacher primer, the teacher manual, and the student workbook. The teacher primer provides in-depth knowledge about the scientific content presented in this lesson. The teacher manual or lesson plan provides a minute-by-minute explanation of the lesson structure, including instructions on how to manage the discussion and the activity. And the student workbook provides additional explanations for the students. You will need to print one activity worksheet per student. The key point of this lesson's do now is to engage the students in the lesson's content. We'll get there by having a Socratic discussion with the students. Students should state whether they believe food can be addicted based on biological reasoning. If you have taught the whole metabolic disease module, students have seen this content before in lessons 3.3 and 3.4. The key points of this lesson's discussion are that the dopamine reward pathway mediates our feelings of reward and pleasure and is activated by certain behaviors like sex, eating, or receiving praise. Food consumption and drug use have many similarities. We'll get there by having a brief review with the students. This is a review of the content students have seen in lessons 3.3 and 3.4. If you didn't use these lessons in your classroom and your students are new to the reward pathway, you will want to spend more time in this discussion. The key points of this lesson's activity are that behavioral therapies, which are used to treat addiction, may help promote weight loss, but they need to address the reward pathway. And that questions on the cutting edge of research are difficult to answer because there aren't enough studies addressing them yet. We'll get there by reading a scientific article. Caution: like most scientific articles, this reading may be challenging for students. Be sure to emphasize that it is not important to understand every detail about the paper. We are only interested in an overview of what was done and what was found. The paper for this activity is called Testing a New Cognitive Behavioral Treatment for Obesity, a randomized controlled trial with a 3-year follow-up, and, as its name suggests, is about exploring the effects of a behavioral treatment on obesity. The activity worksheet is written to help students focus on the most important details of the article. Students should read one section of the article, then answer the corresponding questions. For example, after the introduction, students will answer, what previous research was the study based on? What did that research show? What is the purpose of this study? And what were the 2 hypotheses that this study is based on? Caution: review the readings on the worksheet to ensure that they are at an appropriate level for your students. The conclusions of this paper are a bit anticlimactic. The researchers conclude that their hypothesis that the regimen of cognitive behavioral therapy that they tested was not an effective tool for weight loss. This is important to show the students. Not every study ends how you expect it to end. This is an example of an experiment leading to more questions rather than a definitive conclusion. You can review all this information in the worksheet answer key. It has everything organized just as your students will be organizing it. Additionally, the teacher manual and the teacher primer go over the key scientific concepts. The key point of this lesson's wrap-up is that there are many ways to treat obesity and the best treatment may depend on the person. We'll get there by having a short discussion with the students. We can treat obesity by modifying behaviors associated with overeating, using drugs to prevent overeating, and by surgically treating people so that they are physically unable to eat. None of these methods is perfect, which is why the obesity epidemic is such a scary problem. The key points of this lesson's homework are that the reward pathway causes us to crave certain foods and can lead to food addiction. Therefore, by treating the reward pathway, we may be able to help people lose weight. We'll get there by having students design a study to test a treatment of obesity based on the reward pathway. Students can use the paper from this lesson's activity as a guide for the homework. Their study should include a research question and hypothesis, a description of the participants, whether it is cells, animals, or humans, a control and an intervention, and a description of how they will measure their outcomes. The goal here is not to have students research and find a molecule that will alter the biochemical processes of the reward pathway, but just let them use their creativity to think about how the reward pathway can be used in a treatment. Readings on the worksheet are long, so some teachers find that it is helpful to either assign the entire worksheet as homework for students to spend time on before coming to class, then spend in-class time reviewing the study details together, or break the class into groups and approach this lesson like a jigsaw activity, so that each group is only assigned one portion of the paper, like the introduction, the methods, etc. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to dissect and explain the main hypothesis and methods used in the primary paper, describe the results of the primary paper, and identify alternative explanations for the results found in the paper. Lessons 3.3 and 3.4 discuss how the reward pathway is related to overeating and food addiction in more detail. In Lesson 3.5, students read a primary paper about how hunger hormones may contribute to weight regain after dieting, and should have come to the conclusion that food cravings in the reward pathway need to be considered in an effective weight loss treatment. Don't forget that if you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, you can let us know, and any member of the CTS team member will be happy to help you.